Good morning. Welcome to the Reading Community Church in Reading, New York. Today is April 2nd, Palm Sunday. And the scripture this morning is Mark 15:12 through 15. What shall I do then with the one you call the King of the Jews? Pilate asked them. Crucify him, they all shouted. Why? What crime has he committed? Asked Pilate. But they shouted all the louder, Crucify him! Wanting to satisfy the crowd, Pilate released Barabbas to them. He had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. Citizens of Judea, a day ago, the governor gave order to execute the supposed king of the Jews, one Jesus of Nazareth. Since then, many have questioned his actions. He has agreed to meet with you and answer the questions. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the governor of Judea, the Honorable Pontius Pilate.
I shouldn't have to do this, but my PR people have pressed me to appear before you. Apparently, there are questions regarding decisions I've made as the governor of your territory, particularly an order of crucifixion given yesterday. I've agreed, but I am not pleased. Should not have to put up with such insolence. I've also just been handed a ridiculous request that you be allowed to sit during this time. I will grant permission for those who are here only to observe. For those wishing to present questions, you will stand when addressing the governor. Do you understand this? I will allow some of you to sit only because you Jews are lazy and indolent people. It's doubtful that you would even be capable of standing for even the short duration that we shall be here. Yes, I gave the order for your king, this Jesus, to be executed. What of it? As governor of the empire, I have complete authority to make that order. The whole lot of you could be taken out and crucified if I so ordered. The only reason I don't do that is it would be a sad waste of timber and nails. You've requested this audience to pose questions to me. I'm ready to give answers, but I will remind you that I am under no such obligation. If your questions are not civil, this meeting will be over. Go ahead. What is it that you wish to know? Stand, please.
You have said that you gave the order for Jesus to be crucified. Of what charge was he guilty?
Well, didn't actually find him guilty of anything. I saw no reason to charge him at all. It was your religious leaders who brought him to me. They were crazy. Man hadn't done anything illegal. It would have been fine with me just to let him go, and I was ready to do that. What do I care if he thinks he is some kind of king? Your king. Exactly what could he do about that? This kind of people pop up all the time. They and their followers always disappear quickly, with hardly a whimper. Occasionally, someone will organize a minor revolt, but we Romans know how to quickly dispose of them. I saw no threat from this Jesus. I didn't care what he claimed or did. Even though he said he was a king, I absolutely couldn't see this man leading a revolt. It wasn't in him. Then he also said his kingdom was from another world. Another world? What does that mean? Where is there another world? He was no threat to Rome. I offered to release him. Several times, actually. But it was you Jews who wouldn't have it.
If that is so, how could you condemn the death of a man you say is innocent?
I'm the governor and the procurator. Do you know what that means? means that the emperor has put me in charge of Judea. Totally in charge. The only thing expected of me by Rome is to send in the taxes and keep things peaceful. As long as those things are accomplished, I can do what I wish. Although I didn't see Jesus as a real threat, he was still somewhat of a troublemaker. His presence was causing a disturbance. The leaders of the Jews were unhappy with him, and I was unhappy with them, dragging me out of bed at that hour of the morning. And for what? Apparently a very minor case. A nothing case. I should have had them all flogged. I should have. Maybe I still will. In the end, it was much less trouble to deal with one instead of the whole lot of them. As long as I maintain the Pax Romana, the peace of Rome in this territory, the empire allows me to do as I please. Do I like sending an innocent man to his death? No, of course I don't. Like I said, I tried to let him go. But if his death keeps the peace, am I bothered by it? Not in the least. Besides, he was one of you, just a Jew. A troublesome lot if there ever was one.
Governor, you seem to have a rather strong bias against the Jewish people. Can you explain your distaste for us?
In my years as governor of Judea, I've had my share of run-ins with you people. You're a contentious, uncivilized lot, prone to riot and revolt over the most ridiculous of offenses. I'm not afraid of your tendency towards rebellion of authority. It's just a continual annoyance and nuisance. When necessary, I've had to use my troops to put down disturbances with force. The minor skirmishes you can create are nothing compared to my Roman soldiers. Besides that, you have all sorts of ridiculous religious scruples. Who can figure out what's going to trespass on your sensibilities? Your own religious leaders are always arguing amongst themselves about what is allowed on certain days and what is not. If they can't determine what is proper according to your religion, how can they expect us non-Jews to know? If the emperor would give me the word, I'd put the sword to all of you. Because you pay taxes, he says no. But the emperor has never had to deal with you, to suffer you day after day.
Governor, could you go back to this issue of putting to death an innocent man? I understand that this is within your authority, but could you tell us exactly what caused you to do so? Were you feeling pressured by those who brought Jesus to you?
What caused me to do it? You people, it wasn't me. It was your choice. You know, a few days before this thing happened, there were crowds of your people out in the street shouting, Hosanna, Hosanna, for this supposed King Jesus. I don't speak your insufferable language, but I know what the word means. You're asking him to save you. To save you from what? I know you don't like being under a rule. You want to be saved from Rome. You wanted this Jesus to lead you in some kind of coup against us. What a laugh. Some of my deputies wanted to disrupt your little celebration, to run you off. But I said no. If I thought there was any possibility of you actually sharing any kind of starting any kind of real uprising, I would have told them to go ahead and crack heads. We check things out amongst a lot of you. You have one sword. One sword, a single, almost useless weapon. One sword, and that was owned by someone who hardly knew how to hold it. I said you Jews are a fickle people. In a couple days, you'll have forgotten the so-called Messiah. I'll admit I read that wrong. In a couple days, you weren't asking Jesus to save you. You were asking me to kill him. Is it any wonder I find you Jews so frustrating? So why did I give the order? To pacify you. To shut you up. I don't have to do what you want, but it doesn't hurt once in a while to let you think you're getting something. but do not blame me for this man's death. I washed my hands of it.
Governor, sir, you've said several times that you found Jesus guilty of no crime. And what I'd like to know is how you found him.
What? What do you mean how I found him? I do not understand the question.
What did you think? What kinds of questions did you ask him? What did he say to you? What do you think of the time you spent with him? How would you assess his character?
Assess his character. I never met anyone quite like this man. Dealing with him was quite perplexing. Like no one else I've ever met. The words that he spoke were crazy, telling me he had a kingdom. On the other hand, he was quite lucid. There was no lunacy in his manner of speaking or acting. Seemed quite clear-headed and rather stable. But then telling me he had no power or authority that I had no power or authority of my own. And he said that with confidence, claiming his own authority. At the same time, there was an aspect of humility about him. Never known anyone to speak so. He was at trial for his life, but he put up no defense. This whole ordeal with him was most confusing. I was happy to be rid of him.
Could you explain that a bit further? Maybe with a few more examples of how your time with him was confusing.
I've been in this position here in Judea and elsewhere for some time. I've had considerable experience when dealing with criminals, rabble-rousers, prisoners, troublemakers of all sorts. I'll tell you something. No prisoner looks very imposing when chained between two highly capable Roman soldiers. Initially, I approached him with something of a cynical smirk. Started our interview with a question. Are you the king of the Jews? I figured in this setting, in the imposing praetorium, in my official headquarters, my territory, he would kowtow to me like everyone else. His answer took me back. He looked into my eyes in a most probing manner. Most prisoners won't even look me in the eye. It was obvious he wasn't intimidated by me or the surroundings. Then his reply, he posed a question to me, asking, does this question come from you? Or have others told you about me? He was attempting to shift the focus from himself to me, putting me on the spot. I was uncomfortable with this. But there was no insolence in his voice. He simply wasn't trying to divert attention. Somehow, I think he actually wanted to know what I thought. He wanted to know if I was going to listen to him. And if I wasn't serious about that question, he wasn't going to bother answering. So I shrugged it off. Do you think I'm a Jew? It was your own people, the chief priests, who handed you over to me. What is it you've done? It was his next response that completely threw me. That's when he said, my kingdom is not of this world, it's of another place. He did think he was a king. But not of this world? That's right, that's what he said, not of this world. Some harmless fantasy realm then? My first thought is, this guy is crazy. But again, he didn't seem crazy, he didn't act crazy, he didn't talk crazy. Not at all. I've dealt with a fair number of lunatics too. He just did not fit that picture. He was serious and lucid about being a king. Tried to stall him. You are a king then. He refused to let me brush him off, and he said, I was right in saying that he was a king. And then he said, for this reason I was born. And for this reason I came into the world to testify to the truth. Everyone on the side of the truth listens to me. That's a powerful, heady statement. Suddenly I realized what was going on. Jesus was supposed to be on trial, but somehow our roles have been reversed. Somehow he had put me in the dock. I don't know how he'd done that, but I couldn't allow it to continue. I knew that I wasn't going to get anywhere in probing him further, and I was not going to be probed any further. This man was unsettling me. So I ended our interview with a philosophical question. What is truth? And I had the guards haul him away. By now I was turning inside. Jesus was getting to me. I could tell he wanted me to listen to him, but not as a defense from a man on trial. He knew he was up against the death sentence, but once again he did not say anything to me in an attempt to save his life. He wanted me to listen to him and the charges against him. He wanted me to listen to his message, which he claimed was the truth. Once he was gone, I thought about his words. He had commanded my attention, and I think he even wanted my allegiance. It was his words. It was in his eyes. It was in his stance. But then I started to get mad. Who's in charge here anyway? I'm the governor. I'm the judge. Who does this Jesus think he is? So I shut him off with a question I thought had no answer. What is truth? It's supposed to be a rhetorical question. I didn't expect an answer. There's not a real answer to that question. I just wanted to be rid of him. Sometime later, one of my people told me that Jesus had once said, I am the truth, the way, and the life. If I'd allowed him to do so, he probably would have made up some attempt to answer these questions.
You have emphasized your authority to do almost anything within the realm, and you have said that Jesus was a troublemaker. Why is it, then, would you attempt to release him?
As I've said, this man's and his demeanor greatly disturbed me. I really wanted nothing to do with him. Figured I would have my guards rough him up, throw him out of the city, and put a good scare into him, and that would be the end of it. I went back into the courtyard with a plan. I could offer to free Jesus with an established custom of pardoning a prisoner at this time of the year. I offered to release Jesus, but that failed. It backfired. Instead, you people screamed to free Barabbas instead. I couldn't believe it. Barabbas was real hardcore, a thief and a murderer. Why would you want him loose among you instead of this harmless dreamer with his delusions? So I had my soldiers work him over good. They jeered and ridiculed him, put a crown of thorns placed on his head, and a robe of purple. Some king, I brought out this humiliated man out before you and thinking you might satisfy you Jews. But the crowd then went crazy. Crucify him! Crucify him! Shouting louder than the hosannas from a few days before. Tried to argue that there was no reason to condemn him, but then someone in this crowd shouted, we have a law, and according to that law he must die, because he claimed to be the Son of God. The Son of God? He claimed to be the Son of God? I had not heard this before. Who was this man? He seemed totally innocent, so harmless, and yet there was a power in his presence. And that was unsettling. I am not a religious man, but this Son of God stuff made me nervous. Then, to make matters worse, a note was passed to me from my wife. She said she had a dream about this man and I should have nothing to do with him. She even called him righteous. Wonder where that came from. This case, which I thought was nothing, was getting completely out of hand. This Jesus was no ordinary offender. This was no ordinary trial. called him before me again and asked, "Where are you from?" This time, he didn't respond at all. I suspect that he knew I really didn't care. I only wanted not to be bothered by this perplexing, troublesome man. His silence infuriated me. Do you refuse to speak to me? I have the power to set you free or to crucify you. Threatening and bullying didn't work either. But it did get him to finally respond. He said, "You would have no power over me if it were not given to you from above." It was obvious that he was not guilty before the law, but he wouldn't play any legal games either, not even to save his own skin. He wouldn't defend himself. So I was trapped. It was up to me. I was the judge. The decision was mine alone. So I passed sentence, but I called for a bowl of water, and I washed my hands before them all. And I declared, "I am innocent of this man's blood." And I turned him over to my very efficient soldiers to carry out their duties.
Governor,
Excuse me, would you please stand in the presence of the governor?
may I please stay seated? I have a broken leg and I can't stand up.
This miracle worker of yours, he couldn't heal you?
I never had the chance to meet him because you had him killed.
Very well. You may remain seated.
But what did you think of Jesus?
What do you mean? I've already answered that.
No, you haven't told us who you think he was. Was he the Son of God? What about his kingdom not being of this world, and you having no power except what was given to you from above?
Look, that didn't have anything to do with his trial. My responsibility was to determine only the legal ramifications. Whether he was divine or not had nothing to do with me.
Are you certain of that? From what you have said, it seems clear that Jesus was challenging you to make that decision. Who do you think Jesus is?
I told you, I didn't have to make that determination. It's not up to me. It doesn't matter. I don't care who he is or who he was. I mean, it simply does not matter.
It doesn't matter to you that you put to death the Son of God?
We're done here.